Hi everybody, and welcome back to season 2 of Giant Talk, the world's first OKR podcast, hosted by me, Lawrence Walsh. This week, delighted to join Matt Roberts from Zokri. Hi Matt.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Devon today. I spend a lot of time in London and also traveling the world, but today I'm in Devon, so getting ready for hopefully a sunny weekend.
Is it nice and sunny down there now?
No, it's drizzly, but I'm optimistic.
Good stuff. It is the usual grey up in here in Manchester, but I'm afraid I don't share the same optimism. So Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your background is.
Sure. So for the last sort of decade or so, I've been a software company founder, with my last company selling in 2017. Okay. And post that, I was sort of lucky enough to have a moment to reflect on the things that go well, I guess like most people, when you sort of end a chapter, you also reflect on things that could have gone better. Well, that was certainly my story. And upon that sort of reflection, I sort of knew I didn't want to do, nothing at that point. And kind of my business sort of reflections were sort of a few. And one was kind of some of the great people I've worked with, and kind of the importance of hiring great people and managing them well. And you can certainly sort of feel when that goes wrong. And the other one was sort of the impact of better systems and processes. And sort of when you sort of look at that and what holds all of them together, what I sort of really sort of thought was, well, it's really important for both me and my life and the people that you sort of, when you're at work, you really want sort of purpose. And what I could see that people, what they really wanted to know was kind of, what am I here? What is my company trying to do and achieve? What's my role? How can I help? And how can we sort of both thrive in all of this? And that really sort of set the scene for sort of this new chapter and what we're doing now.
Okay, so really driving people to answer the question of why am I getting out of bed in the morning then, was it?
Yeah, I think we all need that. I mean, do you find you need that?
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, that is the one thing I always sort of thrived off, and is the reason I got into OKRs, to be honest, was because it provides that real alignment and transparency down through to the day-to-day initiatives.
Have you ever worked when it's the opposite? I mean, I certainly saw that with a lot of the people that I got to work with in some of the sort of global offices that I've been around. And when you start talking to people and they don't really know what their company's trying to do, they don't really know what even their team is trying to achieve or how they succeed. And then when you get down to the individual level, it's like, well, how do I thrive here? I don't know. And it's that ambiguous, when that's ambiguous, people just don't seem to sort of love what they're doing. And, you can probably count the days until I think they leave.
100%. I mean, I've worked in and seen companies where the exec don't know what the mission and the purpose of the company is. So I have no idea how the guys on the front line are supposed to know and work towards it.
Yeah, it's not fun, and I think it's a real sign, or a barometer of health of your company.
Completely agree. So tell us a bit about Zokri then, and the mission that you guys are on there.
I think, post sort of my exit, sort of, as I said, the sort of thing that was sort of really started then to fascinate me was what I consider to be sort of growth systems. These are things that would, if you implemented them in a business, are almost certainly going to sort of impact performance in some way, often people-related performance. And there were 3 sort of growth systems that I sort of looked at and considered. That I think should have been or should always be aligned, complementary, and sort of a really sort of foundational to performance. The first one that sort of was quite dear to me was the KPI. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit, but what was always apparent is everyone in business has heard of it or heard of them. Most teams can probably name them. Not everybody measures good ones, and I think there are reasons for that. And for me, these were sort of the beginning of that sort of idea of measuring what matters for me. And if you've chosen really good KPIs, by definition, they sort of correlated with business performance, and they were kind of the levers on performance that should always be tracked and kept front of mind. Right. And you could actually imagine not tracking the things that are levers on performance that correlate with,
and we'll move on,
growth and all those kind of things. Of course you do. What I found is it's amazing how many of sort of those are tracked, but they're tracked in really isolated ways, in little silos, in little tools, or shared really discreetly amongst a few people. So, the idea of knowing, one of the things that underpins sort of OKRs is this idea of sort of widespread transparency and accountability. Even with sort of KPI tracking, that didn't really exist. Right. So we wanted to create a place where, you can take feeds or sort of centralize these kind of key metrics and put them into some kind of dashboarding structure. And then, of course, the second one, it was OKRs. And OKRs are really sort of what you want to achieve. And we really wanted to make them really easy to sort of get on with, use. I'm obviously a big fan. I love the fact that they align companies so well. They force those conversations around sort of measurement, and love the sort of transparency aspect as well.
When did you first discover OKRs then, Matt?
Sorry?
When did you first discover OKRs?
About 3 years ago. And it was really sort of all to do again with, well, if you were to almost guarantee business performance, what systems would allow you to do that and really move through gears that as a company you didn't know you had? And I got part of my sort of research was to go around and visit other company leaders, directors, as well as sort of operating in a non-exec role. When you looked at the sort of companies that were really thriving, whether they called it OKRs or whether it was actually OKRs, they, most times when this was implemented really well, companies were obviously doing very well, and the teams were very, very settled, happy, focused, and there wasn't much fat in the system. And what I mean by that is they were operationally very efficient, and because they were very directed and focused. So for me, they're sort of, okay, well, this system's got something, and it's not, it didn't have something because, once upon a time Google, when it was a few people implemented it and grew big, it was a great system because it addressed lots of the dysfunction. But what was often apparent as well is it wasn't as simple. It's not the simplest system in the world, and it takes a little bit of thought and a little bit of consideration to make it work. And we wanted to sort of bring that on board. And then the other one was, it's kind of when you look at the things that go wrong with goal setting, and I'm sure you've seen this, which is, how do you avoid things like set and forget? And also, how do you make sure the things people do every day, the sort of real day-to-day sort of operational stuff, align with goals? Because I think humans have got this real bias towards doing things they find more rewarding or more exciting. And perhaps not always the sort of things that might align with achievement all the time. And I also think when we're held account for what we do, not just what we want to achieve, that kind of brings out the best in us too. So there's sort of the three areas that I saw as being really essential: sort of track better stuff, set better goals in a more aligned, ambitious way that was sort of more transparent, and then bring the sort of same principles of sort of accountability, alignment, transparency to what we do and how we do it. And for me, there's sort of, if you could achieve that, I was always pretty confident that you were going to sort of, again, find those performance gears that you might be looking for.
Absolutely. That's really interesting. So would you say that Zokri is more primarily a growth system or a piece of OKR software then?
I think OKR software is a growth piece. It's a growth piece of software. I think these things don't silo themselves nicely. I think any OKR software has going to have elements of measurement in it. Mm-hmm. We've doubled down on measurement, probably way more so than most OKR software, because we see things like the tracking of the right metrics as being fundamental, in addition to sort of sharing those metrics or KPIs. We also think that updating progress in measurements is really key. And if you can't name what you're measuring, then you can't update it from third-party systems through integration. So that's kind of another reason for that. And I think the alignment with the doing is, there are reasons for that. I mean, you want goals to be front of mind. And if they're not operationally linked, can they be as front of mind as you'd like? Probably not as much, even though if you implement weekly check-ins, if you're constantly aligning what you're doing with what you're trying to achieve, then I think we are all going to do slightly better, bigger, more rational things.
Completely agree. So let's just get back to basics so we're not losing any listeners before we're even 10 minutes in. KPIs, OKRs, 2-3-letter acronyms, but what is the difference?
So KPIs are really sort of that idea of what metrics correlate with business performance the best. And, the clue's in the name, key performance indicator. Right. And they exist at company levels. We work a lot with technology companies as well as sort of other genres, but there's, OKRs are very popular with tech companies. And they've got their whole suite of metrics that they will track at the very high level of the business. And those cascade down into sales, of this very sales funnel bias KPIs, and then marketing have got theirs, and you can cascade through all the teams. They can all name metrics that would tell the company pretty much, how healthy are we? Where are we tracking? Are things getting better? Are things getting worse? What do we need to improve? As well as doing things like diagnostics. Where are the issues right now? Where are the fires? What do we need to put out? Where do we sort of double down our efforts to fix something? So they run as both sort of performance, from a performance aspect as well as sort of diagnostics aspect. So I think they're important exercises to go through to work out what you track. And with all of those, you've got to know, well, who owns that number? How often does that number get updated? How do we calculate that number? Is it in a system? Do we manually update it? So that whole process of going through those, and I've done that through my whole business career. I mean, it's a very important process for business performance. What are we going to measure? And the old management adages, people do what you inspect, not expect, and all of the other sort of general fables that go around with that. I think generally they're true. When you're tracking good stuff, then people were likely to follow.
I completely agree. And, one of the parts of our, what we call the growth suite here at There Be Giants now, is to drill down those KPIs well before we get to the setting the OKR stage. KPIs sound great. They sound pretty all encompassing. What's the point of OKRs then? Where do they come in?
I think what KPIs don't do is, so KPIs, if you're tracking, they don't set, for example, let's go from the beginning. They don't set hard goals.
Okay.
And one of the sort of, go through all the principles and the strengths of OKRs. That idea of hard, when you look at the academic research around goal setting, there's some fascinating stuff out there. And a paper I read recently was, if you set hard goals, it's worth about $9,000 per employee to a company. But easy goals are not worth that. So, one of the fundamental sort of principles of OKRs is, first of all, let's set things that are hard, the stretch component. Yeah. Let's align ourselves, and the idea of hierarchy and alignment, and one set of OKRs helping another, the achievement of another. That doesn't exist in sort of general KPI dashboarding. The clustering of key results to tell the sort of performance story of the higher level objective description. That they're really nice, because you can have things like balancing KRs that sort of, when seen together, they tell the story of the objective. So how you cluster these things is really, really, it can be quite elegant and almost poetic in the stories that you can tell with OKRs and how they cascade through the company. And I think, between sort of hard, aligned, well-grouped, meaningful, this is, it's obviously a really sort of superior way to just listing a whole load of metrics that you want to track. And it works. There's a reason why it's growing in popularity the way it is. You're seeing that, I'm seeing that. The world is getting on board and wanting to know more about this, and they're doing that because it does offer all those benefits. What are you seeing as the key sort of reasons for people onboarding OKRs?
We at There Be Giants, and I'm aware that other OKR consultants say differently, is we always promote the fact that OKRs should be there to drive growth, drive change, or drive innovation, quite simply, and that they shouldn't be used, therefore, to measure business as usual. And that's where the KPIs come in for us. So obviously there are OKRs that can include KPIs, but we would recommend having them as two separate business management entities. I don't know how that falls into your experience with them.
Oh, very much so. I think, just because you've got all of these KPIs, they shouldn't all find themselves in OKRs. I think, you think about the essence of good strategy is you focus all of your efforts in the areas that matter the most. I think that exists, fundamentally at a company and a team and an individual level. You can't focus on everything at one time. So working out both what you focus on, what makes sense to manage, or inside goals, and then some teams putting KPIs in their OKRs. It doesn't make sense that having some teams that are all more operationally focused that don't naturally track KPIs. It's okay. It's okay to have operational key results, and I think there's nothing about OKRs that I've seen that is truly black and white. I think making it work for your company, making it work for your team, making it work for you as an individual, and having those sort of even change through time is completely okay. I don't know whether you're sort of you're aligned with that.
Yeah, we're all about allowing OKRs to match the drumbeat of your organisation, and that usually can't happen straight away. That there needs to be retrospectives done and things like that, where you slowly start to adapt the way OKRs are done, because in all the clients that we've worked with, we've never seen it done perfectly first time. And that can be down to what people are tracking, can be down to the way they're tracking it, can be down to the cadence and the habits and the routines. But fundamentally, it's pretty much impossible, I would say, to follow a one-size-fits-all approach to OKRs.
Totally.
So in your experience then, which would you say comes first, the KPI or the OKR?
It's a bit chicken and egg, but my preference, if I'm starting fresh, is to tease out the KPIs.
Right.
I think it's one of those much easier things for people to do, and to just get their heads sort of set up for measurement and accountability and goal setting. And then it's just a very natural evolution then to go into OKRs. That said, if you were to start with OKRs, what you can often find inside the key results statements, you can tease out KPIs that perhaps you should be tracking that perhaps you weren't. So I've seen it go the other way too, frequently. And you go, oh, that goal we've set looks like we should be tracking this all the time. And wouldn't it be good if that was a chart inside a dashboard and we were tracking that thing?
With you, Matt, my question was a trap for that very reason that you've managed to escape. I completely agree. We have it, especially in the first couple of quarters of writing and finding the measurements for the key results. You often identify the fact that there is a KPI missing that you need to find a way to track. And in my opinion, that's okay for the first quarter, first couple of quarters. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, not black and white, and I think it's okay to just find your way there. And I've not met a company that's cracked this in first go as well. And I think your point around this can take 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters. And I think the goal I see that really needs to sort of be achieved is one of all of this becoming really cultural. And you talked about the drumbeat. That drumbeat it's part of the fabric of the company. It's how we do business. And I think if you want this to succeed, this has to become how you do business. And what's interesting is kind of how do you make something become cultural? And I think as much as we want to build software and you want to do consultancy, it's the people that are left inside the business that are going to make it become cultural, and we can support that. But there are probably things that you see on the ground that make one company succeed with this sort of cultural aspect versus another that might struggle. What have you seen that sort of what are sort of the essential building blocks of sort of achieving that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting actually, because I recorded a video yesterday about the OKR journey and the level of effort that you have to go into at the beginning. It feels a bit like climbing a mountain, but as you go into your third, fourth quarter, I use the exact same words that you've just used, that OKRs have to become cultural. And there is a certain amount of self-examination of a business that a business leader has to do before they start with OKRs, I think, and a little bit of honesty with themselves to make sure that the culture is right. And we actually recorded a podcast about this last week with Alexander Marsit, and we were talking about how if there is fear of failure, then OKRs aren't going to thrive. And that comes back to these stretch goals that we were talking about before. If people aren't going to set stretch targets because they're scared of the consequences of not reaching them, OKRs are going to fall down, really. And it is this very big cultural piece. So I guess what we're talking about here is embedding a culture of tracking KPIs, are we?
I think it's certainly a culture of measurement. And I think, you've touched on something that's really sort of dear to me, which is, how do you, I think there are some people or employees that are sort of measurement avoidant, and they're either measurement avoidant because they don't want to be pushed hard, or they're measurement avoidant because the company, there are consequences that might cascade from there. Like, well, do I get promoted? What will my review go like? Will I get my pay rise? What's this going to do for my career if I don't achieve? And I think they're the kind of questions that you've got to address at a very senior level to make all of that sort of smooth that journey for people, or hire the right people, and maybe be prepared to let a few people go if they are truly sort of avoidant of performance systems.
I think that is a truth that people need to recognise within OKRs. It's a big shift of culture and change management, and not everybody is going to be on board with the accountability that OKRs bring. And if there are people that need to be let go for that reason, then I think the exec and the managers need to go into the OKR implementation stage comfortable with that fact, and knowing that OKRs are going to bring out the best in the business. And if they lose a couple of team members along the way, then that's for the best where the overall culture of the business is concerned.
Absolutely, and I think you just touched on senior management and their role, and I think this really starts at the top, doesn't it? Which is, it's a total commitment to a couple of things. One is to be sort of data driven, and data driven meaning we are going to do things like measuring KPIs and doing analytics and having data inform us of things, and then the other one is to be goal led, and the commitment to both data-driven and goal-led comes from the top, and that is, and anyone who doesn't want to sort of follow that, there is no place for them. And I think that has to start with the most senior people in the company.
I completely agree. Just to touch back there on what you were saying about being data-driven and goal-led, I would just sort of like to get your two penneth worth really from a software point of view, because my point of view has always been very much in the nitty-gritty operational level. How can software make this more manageable for teams? Because I have worked in businesses in the past where there's teams trying to keep all of this up to date on Google Sheets and chucking numbers in for the first hour of every morning. How can software, how's it reached a place now where it can tie all of this together?
I think, when you actually examine the tech stacks inside most companies now, it's quite astonishing how many pieces of software we all run. I mean, even small companies have got lots and lots of software. I mean, marketing teams are amazing. I mean, they've got their analytics, they've got their marketing automation, they might have their sales pipeline management, they've got their affiliate stuff, the pay-per-click stuff. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And by all of that has a lot of really important numbers all over the place that probably only a few people ever get to see. And that's just one team. So you've got all of these systems that are really fragmented with very narrow visibility across the company, which means narrow accountability across the company too. And the other flip side of accountability is, I always think there are ideas for ways to improve things around the company. And if no one knows what all of different numbers are, or whether you're even trying to improve them, then no one can help you either. So sort of getting them out of all of these fragmented systems towards, or at least the ones that matter, into a more centralized place is really key. And, software's come a long way over the last sort of decade since I've been working, sort of building it, is that, all of these systems have APIs. Right. There are also bridges with integrators like Zapier that allow these metrics to find their way into other systems. And certainly that's important to us, to sort of pull these numbers out, make it easy to sort of take them out of these fragmented systems and centralize them. And that's a big focus. What we're here to do is bring them, centralize the stuff that matters, allow you to set goals around it, and then operationally align yourself. So I think then that culture that you're looking to build is supported in reality. And I get to see a lot of spreadsheets, because people tend to go through this sort of life cycle of discovering things like OKRs, starting life in a spreadsheet, and by quarter two working out that actually this isn't a very good place to keep all this, and the engagement level and all the excitement around OKRs has reduced to the point where people are really not looking at them until the mad panic at the end of the quarter happens. I don't know whether you see this, but if they're there to be looked at frequently, spreadsheets don't seem to be a very good solution for that in the long term. And what you don't want to do is have many false starts. So if using a spreadsheet results in people going, OKRs aren't very good, are they? Then that's not very good either.
It's hard work and more effort than what they're doing already. You're onto a losing battle, really, aren't you?
And if people don't even look at the spreadsheet, if you look at my Google Drive, it's literally got probably thousands of files in there. So having that open in a tab, getting to see it frequently, making sure everything's up to date, it's effort, and you've got to reduce that effort. And we ask a lot of people, and we should be making their lives easier, not better. And there are great, it's not just Zokri, there are lots of other software systems out there 100%. That solve these problems, high value problems. And I consider KPI tracking, goal setting, execution alignment, these are all high value problems, because the prize is really significant. We work 35, 40 hours a week, multiply that by the number of weeks, multiply that by the number of employees. There's a lot of hours that go into that can be applied to moving forward in a business. And you want those applied in the most rational, best, and most engaged way possible. That's the manager's job. And these aren't systems that are questionable whether they work. You've seen this. We know that all of these systems work. What sometimes goes wrong is the implementation, and that's why your consultancy is great, because you can guide people through that and mentor people through the sort of pitfalls. Software there's to do a job too. It's not a question, does this stuff work? It works.
100%. Okay, let's swing this back round to OKRs and KPIs for a second then. Can OKRs survive without KPIs?
Yeah, of course they can. It's there's, whether you describe, what I get to see a lot of OKR statements and key results in particular, and in the narrative of those there are KPIs. You may not call them KPIs, but everyone's read all of the books which basically say if there's not measurement in there, it's probably not a key result, and that's true. So whether you're labeling things as such is neither here nor there. But I think what we've discovered, and this is why we sort of double down on these metrics, which is you're more likely, in our opinion, and from what we've seen, to write better OKRs if you've got good metrics, KPIs in your head and you're tracking them, because you're already got your head in the right place.
Right. So it's the start of that self-cultural shift then, almost.
Yeah, you've embraced measurement, you've embraced performance management, you've embraced sort of the idea of setting a target for things and working towards it. It's and again, all academic research says this is great. Humans love goal setting. We love a stretch. We respond incredibly well to it. We just need a framework for putting all of that in. And if a business does not have a suitable goal-setting framework that is widely used across everybody, it's missing out on massive gains in human performance. And that translates to money. So, if our job is to be professional managers of business and we haven't got systems like this in place, can we call ourselves professional? Now there's a thought.
There's food for thought, eh? Huh. So you mentioned there that you see OKRs and key results performing much better when they've got these metrics inside them. And obviously in your position, I can imagine you get to see a hell of a lot of OKRs written. What are the common pitfalls that you commonly see when people start in the process of crafting OKRs?
I think there's the couple really. And the first one is people often don't really plan. And you can suddenly sign up for a piece of software and just start typing stuff in.
Yeah.
But you've never really thought about what you're typing in or why you're typing it in. You just want to, tip tap away. And for me, I mean, that's where you guys can also come in, which is there's a planning piece that goes on before any of this happens, which is, why are we doing this? What do we want to achieve? How are we going to do it? Who owns what? Who's going to take the lead on this? Who's going to be the sort of the person who goes around the company and chases everybody they needed chasing? How do we ensure that the rules around this and the fact that this is a non-optional part of our culture go around? Where do all these numbers come from? How are we going to sort of make this part of our daily routines? And I'm sure, and I'm just getting going.
Yeah.
It's easy and quick to sign up to a piece of software and just get stuck in. But I don't think you're setting yourself up to succeed by doing that. I think having taking a step back and then doing a bit of planning is kind of essential.
People trying to run before they can walk almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that makes sense. We live in an impatient world where everything's now. And I think this is one of those that you just spend a little bit of time just doing it correctly. Just stops a lot of pain and potential failure down the road. I mean, there are lots of false starts with these kind of things. And I think those false starts come from probably poor implementation planning at the beginning.
Well, I mean, if we're being honest as a consultancy, I would say that the vast majority of our customers come from people who have tried to get off the ground with OKRs and failed with them in some way, shape or form.
And we see that too. So we ask, when people sign up, we ask a question, sort of how many courses have you been using OKRs for?
Yeah. And,
it's often 2 or 3, and they often have migrated from a spreadsheet. And they're both they're kind of the perfect customer probably for you and us, in that they've learned a lot through experience, and they're ready to do it properly now. But they've seen enough value to want to sort of double down and make it succeed. At the same time, you sometimes wish that if that planning had gone up front, then those sort of 1, 2, 3 quarters of suboptimal sort of OKR planning or implementation wouldn't have happened as well. So I guess to have a fully committed non-OKR user wanting to adopt it for you guys would be as good as well.
Right. Yeah, completely. Okay, so I think we're sort of coming to the end of OKRs and KPIs here. Just wanted to close, Matt, with, as we always do, a final piece of advice for the listeners, really, to take action on what they've learned from this podcast. So what I'm looking for is just one last piece of advice that you could give to somebody looking to identify the most important KPIs within their business.
So I see this all the time, and I saw it most recently this morning, and I was sent some marketing key results with KPIs in there, and the one I always see is things like website sessions. And there's a label called a vanity metric, which is basically numbers that can look good but don't correlate with performance commonly. And I think we need, when we talk about KPIs, we are deliberately wanting to weed out vanity metrics, things that don't always, or it is possible that they don't correlate with business performance. I think you've got to just set the bar high and avoid those, and then there are enough good metrics that absolutely correlate with business performance that we should be targeting to not include those. So things I'd like to see, it would have replaced things like website sessions are things like goals. And goals could be, sign-ups, downloads, converting and sort of MQLs generated, conversion rates. There's a whole bunch of things that exist, particularly in marketing, that are much better than some of the sort of much weaker metrics. So set the bar high, measure stuff that really does impact performance, then set really tough goals and watch the business rally around that. And if somebody's trying to tell you that they need to be tracking things that are a bit fluffier, a bit weaker, then just reject them. There's no need. There's enough good stuff out there. We're just not trying hard enough.
Interesting. So it sounds almost like there'd be value in getting a little peer group together and being comfortable and encouraging each other to challenge people on the goals they're setting and the KPIs they're measuring to ensure they're avoiding those vanity metrics. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's part of culture again, is that if you're in a safe enough place to reject stuff and go, actually, do you know what? That's not very good. That you could succeed in that and you would look like a hero, but that's not really helping us. Yeah. How do we know that's helping us? And I think it's quite understandable that some humans will want to track things that are going to make them look great. But we have to be brave enough as both colleagues, managers, to go, actually, that's not the game here. The game here is measuring stuff that really. I keep saying measuring what matters, and it's a brilliant name for a book. I might write one.
I've trademarked it.
But it's true. It's a brilliant name for a book. Yeah. But I think that is the name of the game in all of this.
Completely. Right. Well, we'll leave it on that. I think that is a fantastic, tangible outcome for people to go away and crack on with. So, thank you so much for joining us, Matt. Where can people get in contact with you if they want to continue the discussion?
Via the website, Zokri.com. If you want to email me personally, it's matt.roberts@zokri.com. Happy to receive emails, enter into any conversation you'd like. And I guess thanking everyone for listening, and especially you guys for having me today.
Absolutely, thanks for joining us. And as Matt just said, thank you to all the listeners today. Hope you found this one really valuable. As always, get on Twitter, get on LinkedIn, and engage in the conversation around these podcasts. That's what it's all about. Make sure you subscribe so you get the notifications through Spotify, iTunes, podcast.co, wherever you choose to listen to your podcasts. And if you know somebody that would make a great guest, or you want to hear from somebody, let us know and we'll get in touch with them and see if they'd like to feature. But apart from that, just keep on enjoying the series, and we look forward to hearing from you next time on Giant Talk, the world's first OKR podcast. Cheers, guys. Bye.